Off we go on the magic carpet. Wish, wish. Off we go, sometimes fast and sometimes slow. Once upon a time, there was a shoemaker, and the shoemaker was very poor, for he had fallen on hard times. In fact, he was so poor that he only had enough money to buy one more piece of leather to make one more pair of shoes. And so he went out and he bought the leather, and he came back to his shop and he worked for the day. And in the evening he sat down at his bench and he started to cut out the pieces of leather to make the shoes. Now he was very, very, very tired. And so he decided to finish for the day and went to bed. But he wondered, he wished maybe someone could help him. But too, he went to sleep. The next morning he woke up with a great stretch and a yawn. And he went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps down to his workroom where he had his bench, ready to put the leather together to make some shoes. But where had the leather gone? For it had disappeared. And in its place, the shoemaker rubbed his eyes, was the most perfect pair of shoes. Not a stitch was out of place. How incredible, thought the shoemaker. He called to his wife. Mary, Mary, look, some kind soul has come to us in the night and made our shoes. I wonder who it could be. They thought and they thought, but they didn't have any idea, and so they went and opened up the shop, and the shoemaker proudly put the shoes in the window of the shop. It was not long before in came a customer. The customer looked at the shoes and thought they were the most perfect shoes she had ever seen. There was not a stitch out of place, and she tried them on, and they fitted. And she loved the shoes so much, she insisted on paying double the price. She gave the coins to the shoemaker, and oh, for now the shoemaker had enough money not just to buy leather for one more pair of shoes, but for 2, and enough for dinner. So the shoemaker went out and he bought the leather, and he worked all day in the shop. And in the evening he sat down and he cut out the pieces of leather ready to make the shoes. But he wondered, who were the kind people, the kind strangers who were making the shoes? And he left the leather, the pieces, out on the bench and went to bed. The next morning the shoemaker woke up with a great stretch. Oh! and a great yawn. And he went down the stairs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to the workbench. And there, on the workbench, he could not believe his eyes, for there was not 1 pair of shoes, but 2. He picked up the shoes and he looked at them. They were perfect and not 1 stitch was out of place. He called to his wife, "Mary, Mary, look, some wonderful, kind stranger has made us not 1 pair of shoes, but 2. And they took the shoes into the shop and they put them in the window. And it was not long before the bell rang and in came 2 customers. The 2 men picked up the shoes and they tried them on. They fitted perfectly and they insisted on paying double the price. The shoemaker now had enough money to buy leather for 4 pairs of shoes. He worked all day in the shop and he was so happy. And in the evening he sat down and he cut out the leather for 4 pairs of shoes. Wow! The shoemaker and his wife Mary had been wondering who could be the kind strangers who were making the shoes, and how could they thank them? Then they had a plan. They decided to hide behind the door of the workroom and watch who came in. So that's what they did. They hid behind the door. And they had to stay very awake because on the stroke of midnight, wow, the shoemakers could not believe their eyes, for the window opened and in flew tiny little elves. They were as tall. They were only as tall as my hand. And they wore not a stitch of clothes. They had no clothes on at all. Very, very quickly they took the needle and the thread and the leather which the shoemaker had left out, and they started to sew. But oh, how did they sew? For they were tiny and they had to carry the needle between each other. And they carried the thread. And they sewed and they sewed and they sewed and they sewed, and in the wink of an eye they had finished. And before the shoemaker could turn and say thank you, they had whisked and flown straight out of the window. Out into the night. The shoemaker could not believe his eyes. He went to the bench and he saw not 1, not 2, but 4 pairs of shoes, perfect, with not a stitch out of place. And it was now morning, and so they took the shoes into the shop and they put them in the window. And in through the door came many, many customers, and they tried on the shoes, and the shoes were perfect. And the customer loved the shoes so much, insisted on paying double the price. And then more and more people came through the shop, and the shoemaker realised he was becoming very rich indeed. That evening they wondered how could they thank the elves. And so Mary went to the bedroom and found the curtains, and she cut out tiny little clothes for the elves, hats and scarves and coats and trousers and tops and socks and tiny little shoes. And they wrapped these up in tissue paper, and that night they only put these on the bench, and they went to bed. At the stroke of midnight, in through the window came the little elves. They flew around the room, laughing and joking, and laughing and joking. And then they saw the parcel, and they could not believe their eyes, for they realised there was clothes for them. And they put on the hat and the coats and the trousers and the socks and the shoes and the tops. And in the wink of an eye, they flew out of the window, never to return again. From that day on, the shoemaker and his wife were always happy. Their shop was full of customers, and they had watched the elves sewing the shoes, and never was there a